Hi, it's Alexander Russo with The Grade. This is the Education Show, and I'm delighted to be here today talking with the Baltimore Banner's Lee Sanderlin and Jessica Calefati, who I've known for at least 100 years. Jessica and Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're here today to talk about a big piece that you all did last week. It seems like longer. Last week, about a little boy named Tristan who was lost for a long time and was then just found 2 days or so after your story ran. Let me just jump in and ask, where's Tristan now? What's the latest?
Why don't you take this?
Sure. Right now, Tristan is in a treatment foster home in Southern Maryland. He is, by according to his grandmother, legal guardian, he's doing all right. I think everyone's just happy that he's inside.
I read somewhere that he's already tried to run away. And one of the interesting things about the story that you've written is how you depict government agencies and adults' interest in finding him and his interest in not being found. Can we jump back to the beginning, though? How did you all get on this story in the first place? What's the origin story for you and Tristan?
So we first learned about Tristan and all that had happened to him when we got a tip from a woman named Lisa Austin. She's a part of the story that published last week. She contacted us to say, I have knowledge of this child who had been a student of mine at a local elementary middle school in Baltimore. And he's missing. He's been gone for a long time. She was at that point very worried about him. This was December. The temperatures were starting to drop. And she knew that the other agencies and officials that she was trying to speak with were not behaving as you would expect with urgency when there's a child that young that needs help. So she came to us in hopes that greater attention on this problem might change the outcome for Tristan.
And if you can think back to when you first heard the name Tristan, did you think it was going to be a big story? Are there lots of Tristans out there, or were you not sure whether it was going to be a big story or not?
I think we were initially very worried. I mean, it was cold. It was freezing. One of the earliest tips we got was that he might have been sleeping in a car outside. And he was so young. He was 9. He had just turned 9. His birthday was in September. He should have been a third grader, but he wasn't in school. So I don't know initially that we were thinking through, where is the story headed beyond we need to help get this child found and inside.
But you've been working on this issue of missing or lost kids for a while now. This is not a new topic, if I understand correctly.
We had done quite a bit of child welfare coverage over this past year. That was focused a lot on children that had been allegedly abused or neglected. There were a couple of high-profile cases, a couple high-profile deaths, children within the foster care system where there were challenges and tragedies. So some of the agencies that were responsible for Tristan at this time, we had knowledge of their behavior in other contexts earlier this year, but we hadn't written about missing children like this before. We had published in the story that he is the youngest child missing longer than any other child his age in Maryland, or was before he was found.
When I was reading the story, I couldn't help but think, and maybe there are other people who said this to you as well, I couldn't help but think about Bianca Tones at the Associated Press and her coverage of families and children that are at the edges of schools, at the edges of in and out of service, in and out of need of service, in Atlanta, in Los Angeles. What was it like covering a kid who didn't want to be found and was lost between the cracks, for lack of a better way of saying it?
You want to talk a little bit about the neighborhood?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think covering this was interesting because, so like Jessica said, when we first heard Tristan's like name and learned of his case, we were running around with like a 5 alarm fire here at the Banner. Like, what is the fastest we could publish something? And then in like going out and doing reporting, which was actually just like trying to find Tristan, but also like talking to folks in the neighborhood. I had done some reporting in this neighborhood for a number of years, and knew some community leaders, and like a different picture started to be painted, if you will, where we found that like he's not in a good situation, but it's not like he's a 9-year-old by himself. He's like a 9-year-old, and there are people looking out for him,
Right.
looking out, is like the operative word, but like for people making sure that like he was getting fed, and that he had a place to put his head some nights, not every night, but some nights, especially when it was quite cold. And when we realized, like, so we spoke to people who were like, he's in danger long term, but he's not, we don't believe him. He's in like imminent danger right now. And that is sort of what led us into the story that resulted, which is a story about like, institutional and systemic failures and shortcomings.
Right. It's also a story, though, about ambivalence on the service recipient side, which I think may be new for some journalists or some readers to think about. And in some ways, and I'm just projecting myself here entirely, I wondered whether you guys felt like you were the good guys or the bad guys. Journalists like to think of themselves as the good guys, but clearly there were people who didn't want him to be found and didn't think it was in his best interest to be found. What was it like?
It's another good question. I don't know if we think of ourselves as good guys or bad guys. I think we are telling a story that's worth telling. I think, like, when you think of this, though, I think the story would be a lot different if Tristan was a 15 or 16-year-old kid. But
Okay.
I think for, like, a 9-year-old, I think we can all agree that, like, 9-year-olds, they have agency, but they don't have a ton. And I think we can all agree that, like, 9-year-olds should probably be in school. They should probably have access to healthcare and dental care. I think it's like, I know a lot don't, but they should. I hope that's something we can all agree on. I think it's like, I don't know. This is way too simplistic, but it's like a lot of 9-year-olds want things that are not good for them, and then they have people in their life that tell them, no, you can't have that. You have to do this. And this is, in some regards, like a very extreme case of this. But it's also a story about people who don't trust these systems or these institutions because they have failed them in the past, right? Like, but I don't know if there's like good framing of like we're the good guys or the bad guys. I mean, we were president certainly.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to add to that is one key date in this story is when Tristan runs away, and just prior to that, he had been at a hotel with his great aunt, and we know that his great aunt called child services and said, I'm not able to care for him right now. And then subsequent to that, we knew that Tristan was likely still with his great aunt. So this is a woman who raised her hand and said, I'm not able to care for this child that, we believe she loves deeply. But she was just not equipped at that point. So that is the framework through which he is missing. He is likely with someone that said to authorities, I'm not able to care for him.
Right. Two of the elements of the story that I resonated with the most were the concerned teacher or counselor who appears several times in the story, and also the opening scene. The scene you made the opening, which is the army dudes tromping around.
Marshals.
What were the elements of the story in terms of reporting or writing that really were most important for you to get in the story that you fought for, or that readers have responded to most powerfully?
Lee, please talk about the Marshals. He was there.
I guess it's hard to think about now. Um, we're so tired. It's like the marshals were important to get in the story because it's like showing that. I guess if you read the story, it's sort of you ask yourself like, did it have to come to this? Did it have to come to like this paramilitary force like looking for a 9-year-old? That's just not that's not normal. Nothing about that is normal. Nothing about carrying your rifles and wearing your bulletproof vests and like going to kick in the door is normal about like looking for kids that you've had more than 2 dozen tips on, right? Or like that you've spotted that people have seen. I think that's important. But I think like the other thing that was important for us to get into the story repeatedly um, is like, I mean, it's hard to write a narrative story about someone the subject that you don't get to talk to, which is Tristan, right? So like trying to put just pieces of like his own humanity in the story was a great challenge, but like a very important challenge for us. We felt like you had to have those things. You had to juxtapose like the full weight of the state against uh, just like a little kid.
Yeah.
Jessica, how about you? What was an important element or aspect of the story structure for you?
One important interview we got sort of late in the process was with a woman named Heather Thomas. She, we now know, played an extraordinarily important role in what unfolded and really was the only person who actually found Tristan, found him, knew that he was safe, he was with her. And then, as we explained, that unraveled and he slipped away. But the other piece that Heather was able to share with us was some of this humanity that, he had a cat, a black cat named Shadow, and he was interested in video games. It just things that remind us that he's just a child. Should be a third grader.
Yeah.
But he's not right now.
Well, the overall effect was remarkably vivid and compelling. I found myself reading the story, hoping and also horrified at the possibility that the one of you was going to find him. I don't know if that ever came close to happening, but that's how close I was feeling to the story as I was reading it, both for him and for you. Can we talk about I'm assuming that didn't happen anywhere. You guys never came within 100 yards of him.
I don't know. We think we might have. One day out there, our third violin colleague, Jessica Gallagher, and I were in the neighborhood. We did call 911. We thought we'd seen him. It was the wrong kid. Then,
right.
Anyways, this was like too much to put in the story, But the police officer like started talking to us. It was like, oh yeah, like I know about the kid. And, yeah, like actually I heard he's over on this street. So we went over to the street. Wasn't there, but like around the corner, lo and behold, like there's this small kid. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Everyone his age should be in school, sitting on top of a little dirt bike, a little moped. Just like fits his description vividly, right? Like we heard he'd been riding around on one of these things, and like we had this whole thing. We were like, oh my god, like do we call 911 again? Like what do we do? How do we should we should talk to this kid? So we circle the block. We're ready to like stop and talk to him. And by the time we get back around, this is like 2 minutes. Kid's gone, dead, just gone. And then we were like, was it him? I don't know.
One of the things that, now that I think about it, one of the things that you didn't do was make yourselves a big part of the story, either in the reporting and of the original story, or even in the follow-up story about him being discovered. Let's be honest, most journalists, most news outlets would put it in the headline in the first 3 paragraphs, kid found because of our reporting, just because that's the way journalism is these days. And I have to say that I felt like the piece about him being discovered was really muted in regards to the whole look at me thing that can happen in stories.
think that was ever our goal or intention. And there was a point where, there's just like a couple of paragraphs in the story where we talk about the Banner's role. And there was a point in editing where there was even less than what we included. I think our hope for this was really to put the spotlight on the officials and the agencies that really should have been doing more. And, we were sort of in a position where we were gathering all of the information, talking to all of the key figures. And I don't know that others had that perspective until we gathered it all and published the story. And
I would say I would just piggyback on that and say like two things. Like I can tell you that Friday morning when like we heard they'd found him was like an extremely emotional time for us. And then compare that to like the people in the story, like his grandmother or Lisa Austin, the school psychologist, who sort of like the moral force for good in this piece, right? But like I don't know, like it's just what like the story is about him and like hoping that he gets some help that he clearly like needs and support that he needs. And the story is about like shining a light on the systems that failed him. I mean, as the governor said, every system that this child has encountered in his life has failed him. And that's like a powerful thing for the governor of Maryland to be saying. Yeah. And it's just like I don't know. The story, yes, the story exists because of the Baltimore Banner. It's out there, but like we are not the story. We shouldn't be. That would really take away the focus on what's actually important.
Let's talk for a second about systems and systemic failure. And because this is the grade, and most of the people who are watching or listening to this are going to be education journalists, can we talk about what the school and the school systems did or didn't do or could have done? Because I'm guessing that there are some systemic issues going on here that affect other kids besides Tristan. Can you lay that out for us?
Yes.
You did a whole sidebar about it, which I appreciated tremendously.
Yes. So we know that Tristan's education journey begins at a local elementary middle school called Marie G. Faring. That's where he encounters some really devoted staff members, Lisa Austin being one of them.
Right.
And it's at Marie G. Faring when he's a second grader where the local team at the school determines Marie G. is no longer able to meet his needs. And they seek to place him in a new school called Sharp Leadenhall, which is a special public day school in the city. It's within the district. So it was a transfer that was processed. But that transfer is the beginning of a series of just awful things that happen in his life.
Should he not have been, I'm sorry to interrupt, should he not have been transferred? Is that one of the lesson points of this?
No, the lesson is that he absolutely, like, for a kid in Tristan's situation, like Sharp Leadenhall is a good school, but the takeaway is that there has to be like support for getting these kids to school. He could walk to his old school. This other school this new school's on the other side of town. Obviously his home life is incredibly unstable. The school system, it remains to be seen how invested they were in like doing what they could to make sure that Tristan would come to his new school. The employees there.
Sorry to interrupt, but did the transfer come with transportation, or was it, we've transferred you, it's a great program, see you when you get there?
It did come with transportation. There are challenges there that we're still exploring.
Right.
But what I wanted to note is, in education reporting in general, there can be focus on children staying enrolled longer than some might say they should be because they're not attending. And does that district or school deserve the per pupil funding allocation that comes with them being on the rolls? And then there's the opposite of that, where is a district or school being too rigid? The clock strikes 10 days and suddenly someone is getting unenrolled instantly. And in this case, I think he needed more support. You know,
Just to make sure I've got the story right, he's at the home school, neighborhood school. He's transferred. He's at a certain point stops showing up at the transfer school, the specialty school, and he's just enrolled there.
Yes. And the other really important thing to note that's happening at this time is there is a crisis in the family. His grandmother has a stroke basically at the same moment that he is beginning his new journey at Sharpland Hall. So the school district at that point is supposed to be checking in, letters, calls, communication to the family. But his grandmother at that point is in the hospital and he's living with other family members and
who are just unreliable individuals, as like gets laid out in the story, you know. So yeah, like the system failure there is just, this is a school. Sharp Hall has 29 students, you know, who all have high needs. I mean, there should have just been an intensive focus on why is this kid not coming to school? What is holding him back? What can we do to get him in school?
Were the schools or the school system reliable? You described the people who were taking care of Tristan. What's your takeaway so far, based on your reporting, on whether the schools did what they were supposed to do, the best that they could, or is there a larger problem
here? The school system, as you know, is limited in what it can share about individual students. So we don't have a complete view of what happened. Right. But just want to say again that the staff at Marie G. Faring, his neighborhood school, I mean, they were not responsible for him anymore. But at the end of the summer, when they learn what happened, you know, so we talked about the stroke. In addition to that, there was a fire. His house burned down during summer break. And so when the staff at Marie G. Faring returns to school at the end of summer and learns about the fire, they immediately spring into action and try to connect with folks that can help Tristan. And, you know, he wasn't their student at that point, but they cared enough to do that anyway.
Right, which is lovely and impressive. Reading the story, I felt like I learned a lot about enrollment and disenrollment transfer procedures. I'm guessing that there were a lot of other journalists trying to find out what the disenrollment rules and practices were in their school systems, because I think it's a corner of education systems that people don't know. Bianca Tonis, who I mentioned before, she helped us all learn a lot about enrollment processes and procedures and how they can become obstacles, intentionally or otherwise. Robert Samuels at the Post wrote a piece about truancy, record keeping, and policies. It was very helpful in helping me at least understand absenteeism. If there's one, there'll be many, but if there's one thing that people, I think, should remember from your piece, it's that this awkwardly named procedure is very, very important to kids' lives.
Absolutely. It is.
Last couple of questions. Thank you so much and congratulations. What's the reaction been to the piece overall in terms of readers, subscribers, public acclaim or criticism? What's it been like for you two?
I mean, tremendous support. I feel like our readers, you know, were just along for this journey and care about Tristan as much as we do. That was evident in public comments on the story, calls and emails we received, you know, local politicians, everybody. I mean, you forget now because he was found so quickly. There was, you know, a period there where the story is published and he is still out there somewhere. So we were all very worried and just so grateful when we got the news that he was safe.
Lee, how about for you? What's it been like for you?
I mean, a lot of the same. A lot of just like overwhelming. I mean, the response has been overwhelming. It's been largely, I mean, everyone is acknowledging how heartbreaking story it is, but they're also, they care deeply. They're grateful that the story exists. I think that's true not just for our readers, but like people in government, in city and state government, the highest levels seem like galvanized by this reporting to hopefully begin to try and address some of our like long entrenched problems here.
Well, it's an amazing feat, the reporting and the writing together. And I'm sure it took an inordinate seeming amount of time while you were doing it. And I hope you're getting a lot of support from the newsroom as well as from the outside world. I know that the story was mentioned in many places, including a newsletter I quite admire called Local Matters, which collects investigative pieces every week. I know that the two of you are finalists. What a month it's been for the two of you, finalists for your broader work on missing children. What's next on this story, and what's next for you individually?
I think we're trying to figure that out now. We were so focused into the end of last week on just Tristan, the search for Tristan being located, what's immediately happening with him. So we're beginning those conversations here.
Yeah, we know there's more to explore with some of these systems, like around unenrollment and around some other things in child welfare system in Maryland. But we're trying to like hone in and plan that next course.
Excellent. I hope that national outlets pick up the story, interview you, pick up the topic. It seems like it's both a very individual and city-specific story, but it also seems like a larger national story. I certainly hope that happens as well. Thank you so much for talking with me and sharing your insights. I really appreciate it. Lee Sanderlin and Jessica Calefati from the Banner, thank you so much.
Thank you.